Poison Ivy, issue 11, G. Willow Wilson writing with Marcio Takara on the art. Take it away, Matt.
Yeah, so Pam and the health retreat for Gloop are still tripping off of her lamia spores that have adapted from her. And people are feeling like empathetic, like they can kind of, because they're connected because of the spores that came from Pam, they can kind of feed off of each other's emotions and they feel comfortable around each other. And there's just this feeling of warmth and love. And Janet, who's Pam's friend, is like, so wait, why can't we do this all the time? Like this is like an ideal utopia. And Pam's like, well, do you want the poetic answer or do you want the scientific? Because the scientific answer is that we need more dopamine than our brain can produce to be that cooperative. But the poetic answer is that we all have our own boundaries and limits, and we don't know what each other's are, so we need these chemicals to give us permission to cross those boundaries. And she's like, yeah, maybe we should just stay like this. And then Janet passes out. Pam starts to panic and she yells at Janet to stand up, and she does. And so now it's almost like she's fully in control of all of these people because they're basically high off of her mushrooms. And so it gets into that kind of what her ultimate plan was with the original Lamia spores, to create the zombies, to kind of wipe out a chunk of Earth and stuff. So, Pam now feels like this weird responsibility because, like, they're internally connected through the network of mushrooms, right? So yeah, that works, but now they're all connected to her. So now they're also bending to her will, and she doesn't really like that because she's learned, life's about free choice and free will and all this stuff. And so, she's like, well, I mean, if we're so connected, let's do some good. I'm the center, I'm the mother, right? And so there's this semi truck that's speeding through the area, and Pam and the group stop them, and the truck drivers complain because it's a couple, and they decide that they're going to drive through the crowd anyways. And Pam is like, no, they'll stop, and they don't stop. And so you see Pam grabbing kind of the group, trying to shield them, and the truck goes through, and they stop, and no one's there now. And so Pam realizes that because they're all connected, they can travel through the green together. And so out of her quick thinking, she traveled through the green. They all pop up out of the dirt, a couple 100 yards away. And she's like, oh, this could definitely be a problem. So they all start coming out of the haze, and Janet starts, questioning Pam's like, why would you use this as the human blockade? And she's like, well, I still have a mission, and I sorry, I am who I am. Like, I'm gonna, she's like, no, that's not who you are. This is the Solbin thing. That's what you were, and she goes, no, you're not. When I first saw you, you were this monster, but now, like, you still are that monster, but you want to protect us. You want to protect others from the bigger monster. And you can do that. You have the permission. So it gets back into that Pam talking about, sometimes you need those chemicals to erase those boundaries, even for Pam, right? She still thinks that she has to do things a certain way, right? And now she's arguing with Janet. She's like, well, no, I didn't infect these people. This isn't my fault. The Gwyneth Paltrow analog, she collected all these mushrooms. This was an accident. And Gwen pops up out of the dirt finally, and is like, well, no, how were we supposed to know this was going to happen? She starts trying to shift the blame, and she tries to blame it on Pam. And so Pam, goes into that, scary psychedelic version we've seen of her. and she starts backing Gwen down and being like, well, no, you know, you were rushing. You didn't even check to see if these mushrooms were edible. You just were all about your cost and all about,
You know, I only half pay attention. I just
Yeah.
keep hearing you talk about mushrooms. That's all I'm hearing.
That's what this is about, right? And so, you didn't check anything. You didn't train these people properly. You share responsibility. And Pam gets to be the big monster here, and she's yelling at this Gwen, and she's in full like monster Ivy mode, where Janet stops her, kind of reminds her that she's not going to do this stuff anymore. And Pam backs down, but as she gets down to talk to Gwen, Gwen's just like, yeah, I'm scared. I didn't know what else to do. I'm not thinking straight. I wanted to help people. I don't want to hurt people. And they hug. And as they hug, Gwen starts coughing, and Pam realizes that the Lamia spores from before are still active. And so essentially Gwyneth Paltrow explodes into a mushroom colony. And it looks like the mushroom colony is alive now. So it used this as a way to evolve past Pam's control. Definitely feels like we're heading towards the end of a story here. But yeah, there's this arc has been completely about the mushrooms and them being used. Like, they're not necessarily bad, right? And that even from research and stuff that I've heard, the various podcasts, that like people that dose with I don't know the full scientific, so I don't want to say it wrong, but basically the hallucinogenic portion of mushrooms also opens up empathy pathways. So like in small doses, they can use them in like therapies to make people kind of balance out. And I feel that's what G. Willow Wilson's getting at through all of this, is that, Pam doesn't want to necessarily be the bad guy. She needs to find the balance, right? She still wants to save the earth, but, so she's had those empathy channels open through this contact with the mushrooms, but now the mushrooms are trying to, do things their own way here. They don't care what's in their way. They're just still trying to spread. But I mean, it's kind of good storytelling in that, she took a little side jaunt away from the original, Lamia spore things, but I think it's smart with Last of Us popping back up in the public consciousness, right?
I'm surprised you even know about that, Matt.
Oh, I do. And so, it took a little side jaunt, and now it's back to where the Lamia almost have their own form, and it reminds me of when Charles Soule was writing, and the mushrooms had their own kingdom. It was the gray, right? And this feels kind of in vibe of that. So they're still kind of part of the plants, but not really. So, they're kind of using her control, but it leaves Pam in a middle spot. The art by Takara is great because it gets, it shifts from these, beautiful pages with like psychedelic colors to complete monstrosities. And it's got like this watercolor element to it, and it's still some of my favorite art every month, like without saying. But yeah, pretty strong issue. Feel like we're coming to the end of a story again. And yeah. So that was Poison Ivy 11. I'm gonna give this an 8.5.